Okay, this is another edition of Quackaholics Anonymous on this day of June the 2nd, 2026, 6 months into the year of 2026 already, which if I had an OCD mind, I would say six day when it comes around in a couple of days, 6 month, 26, 6 and 6 and 6. I don't know if anybody ever saw that old, it's not really a great comedy, but it's actually decent enough for that kind of a comedy, but it's a bizarre comedy called The Frighteners. The Marine Sergeant in Full Metal Jacket returns as a ghost of the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. I don't know if anybody remembers that one or not, but Jeffrey Combs, who's in all kinds of really bizarre and off-the-wall films. In fact, he even played a talking mold fungus in someone's bathroom wall in something called Motivational Growth. It's really, really strange, and one of those films that I don't even know if I would recommend that if you were under the influence of a lot of drugs and psychedelics either, but there's a scene where he's running numbers together and calculating. Uh, I had a couple of people reach out to me about missing the live interview broadcast thing I did with Burn the Stigma, and any live show on this channel is not going to get erased. I mean, you don't have to actually see it live as it's happening. You might miss the group chats or whatever that I couldn't actually see when the interview was going on, because I had never really used the StreamYard setup before and had no idea really what I was doing, but it seems like it works. But you might miss that part, but the interviews are going to be on the channel under the live broadcast. When you click a channel, it'll say video shorts, just go to live. I'm trying to get an interview set up with Thrive Alcohol Recovery with Katie, who talks about the Sinclair method. I was going to have her on to discuss more about the Sinclair method and its success rate and, everything else. She's got a pretty fascinating story. If you go to Thrive Alcohol Recovery and you click on Katie among the many members of the staff, she's got a pretty impressive personal story with her battles from addiction to the Sinclair method. And one thing I definitely want to talk to her about is the way the doctors don't even want to prescribe it. The same thing kind of happened to me when I first learned of naltrexone, and I was still constantly relapsing and still in the program. I even suggested it to a doctor. Have you ever thought about giving me naltrexone? I'd never heard of it before. And of course, the doctor just looked at me and said, well, for an alcoholic like yourself, we don't recommend that. And I was like, for an alcoholic such as myself, the fucking medical community has been snookered into believing this bullshit, hook, line, and sinker, and it's really a tragic thing. And hopefully that's starting to evolve and change a little bit, but who knows for sure, because corruption rules. And also, from recovery to discovery, his channel is going to be doing a 9-part series with various books and literature taking apart the toxic religious cult of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's going to be a series I'm going to probably be looking forward to. He's right there in the links below in the video description, like all the other content creators. Just like the anti-AA concept has got a couple of new videos, and one of them was a really good one because it was talking about your physical health and addiction. And it was something that I didn't connect or make two and two together with for a very long time after even leaving AA and after quitting drinking, is how much your physical health plays a role in your mental health. Believe it or not, for a long period of time, I looked at the two as two separate entities that were completely different from one another and didn't realize how related they are. There's a fascinating book that was just called Gut, of all things, but it was the connection between the overlooked digestive system and then the role it plays in mental clarity and in everything from depression to anxiety. Not saying it solves everything. I'm not on here plugging some kind of macrobiotic diet that's going to fix all your problems and transform you into whatever. But that is an interesting connection, but it was on the anti-AA concept. And I didn't actually shout out to another content creator on here who talks about AA sometimes, but he goes by the name of Darth Melkor. The name of his channel right now, I actually can't say it off the top of my head, but I'll put a link to it in the video descriptions like I do with everybody else, because a lot of his channel focuses on health and exercise and working out and those types of things. And he's a pretty solidly built guy when it comes to that sort of thing. And what was another announcement I was going to make? Oh yeah, the Sobriety Bestie channel, as I've been calling her, has been going by her regular name, Kirsten Johnson, for quite some time now, and I just keep calling it Sobriety Bestie. But I think we know who I'm talking about. But she had a guest on today. The interview dropped today. I don't know when it was recorded and filmed. That is also with a guest who I interact with online. I don't know if she's one of my subscribers or not, but a couple of my subscribers, not several, but a couple of them, have actually been on her show for interviews, and I've been on her show a couple of times as well. And there was one other announcement I had to make, and I cannot think of what it is. It's eluding me. Yeah, my voice sounds a little off because of, I know I say it all the time, but sinus problems, literally due to up and down weather and everything. So if I sound more like Joe Pesci than myself this video, that's what it is. And I'm not really sick even. I don't even feel under the weather. It's just when I wake up in the morning, the rooftop of my mouth is sore and I'm blowing my fucking nose all the time. I mean, I want summer to hurry up and get here, and none of this winter and one morning and summer one morning and spring one morning. I get all 4 seasons in a fucking day here lately. I don't know what's going on with that. There was also, I forgot to mention, my Buy Me a Coffee page. I drop an article every Tuesday. I try to drop an article every Tuesday. I've tried to get a little bit more disciplined about that. One of those dropped today. I talked about the interesting parallels between the language in the Big Book and the book written by Peabody in 1931, which he had with him when he wrote the Big Book. And lines like, once a drunkard, always a drunkard, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. The line about half measures will get you nowhere is what Peabody says. Half measures availed us nothing in the AA Big Book. There's 2 or 3 other really sharp parallels. It shows he lifted a great deal of that shit from Peabody's book, as well as the Oxford group he ripped off, and as well as a couple of other things he ripped off. But the funny thing about it is the Big Book doesn't mention any of these people. It doesn't say, I came to the conclusion that alcohol is a fatal progressive disease because of Peabody and because of the Oxford group I'm convinced there's a spiritual solution, or any of that shit. The Big Book is founded on a mythology that Bill W. just bumped into Ebby, and Ebby said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? Even though Ebby never answers how he knows there's a God to begin with. That's cool with you two choosing his own conception, and that there was this icy intellectual mountain, which, by the way, he didn't have, that melted, and it just turned everything it turned water into wine, and, it made Lazarus rise up out of the grave again. It made, the blind see and the lame walk and all that other shit because some guy said to him, why don't you just choose your own conception of God? By the way, Ebby never quit drinking. So, and Bill sort of kicked him to the curb because we don't need bad PR like that for a cult religion. But anyway, that post dropped today. I'm working on a couple of more to drop every Tuesday. And again, if you do go to my Buy Me a Coffee page, you can read all the articles. You're under no obligation to give any money whatsoever. It's all free. It's all right there. So don't feel pressured. And don't feel like you have to give. And by all means, if you're financially strapped right now, and who the fuck is it with the gas prices being through the roof, and I don't know if we're in a ceasefire or war or a ceasefire. I mean, the messages is all mixed up, and who the fuck knows what's real anymore in that situation. But yeah, when gas prices go up, the rest of the things go up, and it's all passed on to the consumers, who have to pay a bunch of corrupt politicians who will lie to us and tell us how they're doing everything within their power to fix the problem that they created to begin with. And of course, don't forget to vote for them again. Anyway, but if you're financially strapped, don't feel like you have to give me something. I mean, I'll be okay. I work a real job. I work sometimes 60, 70 hours a week. I mean, I wished I didn't have to, but, you got to do what you got to do. But again, if you're financially strapped, don't feel like you have to give anything. And for the people who did, because someone did do that recently, they said, this is $10 I really can't afford. I deeply appreciate you doing that. But, take care of yourself first. I'll be fine. Well, if an airplane doesn't fall on me tomorrow, or, if I'm not eat up with cancer right now saying this, I'm a reverse positive thinking guy, by the way, before I get started. You know how there's those people that say the power of positive thinking? Well, I'm one of the people that believe in the power of negative thinking. You see, I think the absolute worst case scenarios of every single situation to the 100th degree, and then when bad shit happens to me, I just say, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I don't have a terminal illness, and an airplane hasn't fallen on me, and I'm still walking around. So that's my power of negative thinking for you. Think terrible. Think pessimistic. Think that nothing is ever going to get better. Wake up in the morning and say, it's never going to get any better. It's never going to get any better. And the worse it gets, I'll be fine. And you have to sincerely kind of believe that that's the case. And you will be amazed before you're halfway through at how oftentimes you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's the same thing with people in general. You hate everybody you meet on sight, treat them with suspicion, and then you get pleasant surprises when they turn out to be okay. But what we're going to do today is we're going to weigh in on an argument that I have made with the seriousness it actually deserves, because I've had so many people get caught up in this "it worked for me" bullshit. And I've been guilty of kind of trying to I know it's bullshit when people say, well, the program saved my life. I've said it is bullshit, but when it comes to going after what someone's claiming as a personal testimony, it becomes almost difficult to do so, because you're wandering into the territory of behaving like those AA assholes. You're wandering into the territory of telling people what they really think and what they really feel. I could add that Scientology has people who claim it saved their life. John Travolta said it kick-started his career again in the 1990s when he was making all those movies in the 90s, including that terrible movie that, yes, I actually did enjoy it when it came out, but it was called Face Off. I don't know if there's anybody out there that remembers that movie with him and Nick Cage, but he claimed Scientology was responsible for all that. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have said that, the Mormons have saved their lives. It doesn't mean that the new Egyptian that the guy Joseph Smith found was true. It doesn't mean that any of the claims he made is real. It doesn't automatically render the indigenous population of America before, the European settlers came here. It doesn't make them lost tribes of Israel either. Another one of his claims. There was a documentary I watched one time on serial killer culture. Well, it wasn't a documentary. It was a 6-part series. But there were, even to this day, there are Charlie Manson followers that will literally sit there with a straight face on camera and talk about how Charlie Manson is so intelligent. Charlie Manson is a visionary. Charlie Manson is just... he's got it, man. And they look totally fucking deranged, which you'd have to be deranged to think Charlie Manson was a fucking genius of some sort. Although, if you want a little bit of weird entertainment, watch his parole hearings. I mean, I think that was probably what he did in those parole hearings. I think if they'd actually told him, Mr. Manson, you're eligible for parole and we're going to let you out, he would have probably ran screaming, because he waited on that performance every year for parole. But personal testimony does not equate to reality, is the point I was trying to demonstrate with all those examples. Personal testimony is personal testimony. But for me to make a claim, and I've had a lot of people come at me with this, not necessarily on here, but on other channels, of you made a claim AA doesn't save anybody. What? You can't back up that claim. Yeah, I realize that's a hard claim. And I'm going to try to defend that. Well, I'm not going to try. I'm going to fucking defend that claim. So I'm going to ask you to weigh in on an argument with me with the seriousness that it actually deserves. Because I'm here to examine a set of claims and the practices that follow from them. Because ideas shape lives and perceptions, and sometimes they kill us. But I'm going to make the claim AA has never saved nobody, and I'm going to defend that claim with reason. The claim is that a recovery model that treats agency as a surrender to an external spiritual force that is yet unproven, that centers around confessions and shame and moral defects as the pathway to healing, that insists on metaphysical elements as the conditions of safety, cannot be a a plausible answer to addiction. It cannot be, because none of these claims have ever been demonstrated, nor is there any evidence that even that's possible. You know, when you hear people talk about your higher power doing for me what I can't do for myself, we haven't even been able to demonstrate that that's even remotely within the realm of possibility, that an external force could reach into your brain and alter your chemistry. We haven't demonstrated that it's even within the realm of possibility to be able to actually read the thoughts and minds of another person through an external mystical force, simply because thoughts themselves are external, or not external, electrical impulses and things like that. You think you got a TV in your head when you're picturing things, but you don't have a TV in your head. You have a group of neurons firing randomly, that come together to form that coherent picture in your head. In fact, I actually heard an interesting thing. I don't know if it's scientifically grounded or not, but that when you have a memory, you're not actually recalling a moment in time. What your brain is doing is putting together the memory from a moment in time for you. Therefore, that's why memories are not always reliable. But something like that cannot be, I lost my place in my notes a minute, cannot be the only answer, because people who recover do so for reasons that have nothing to do whatsoever with theological claims. If AA was correct, I would be drinking myself to death right now, because I left. I don't believe in the steps any longer. I don't have a God. I don't have a spirit of the universe. I don't humbly beg anything to remove my so-called shortcomings, which we have not determined that there is such a thing as a shortcoming and not just aspects of human nature. And a lot of people, like Burn the Stigma, who was on the show with me not too long ago when I did my first live broadcast, who even pointed out, if abstinence was the only possible path for people with destructive addictions, then guess what? There would be more of us dead, because none of us would have ever been able to fulfill lifelong abstinence. That's a tall order. And it's not a worded order I can't go through with it. It's unrealistic, because addiction itself is beyond just mere morals and willpower and weakness. And if you notice, AA members, when they're trying to be pinned down in comments, will say, well, nowhere did we say it's the only way. But if it didn't work for you, it's because you weren't willing. It's because you're not a real alcoholic. It's because you're not this. It's because you're not that. Well, I thought you just said it was not the only way. But now you're telling me the reason that it didn't work for me is because I was bitter and resentful and all this other horse shit. So you're saying it is the only way, even though it's not the only way, because everybody it doesn't work for gets blamed for it. Open the big book and read the language. At one point, the text actually says, he is the principal and we are his agents. I've made fun of that on here before. I've said, he's the camera guy and I'm the background artist, or some shit like that. Well, those words are not just mere words on a page. They reveal a model of human action in which the individual is an instrument of a higher will. You're no longer choosing your recovery. You're no longer choosing your pathways. You're saying you're giving up your autonomy to be controlled by some mystical force that's going to do shit with your brain, so long as you tell it all about your sex life and you tell it all about that time you stole a candy bar when you were 5 years old, or one time in school when you snapped another kid's crayon in kindergarten, and that's why you're drinking right now, because your will is completely broken. You have no will of your own. There's this mystical spirit moving through you all the time. That's a model of human action in which the individual no longer counts. He's a conduit, like an electrical outlet, for some sort of mystical power that's acting through him. That's not any sort of agency accounted for here. Agency is not being a marionette or a puppet dangling around on strings held by metaphysical hands. It's the capacity, agency is to make predictions about the world, to test those predictions, to learn from feedback, and to act with authorship in one's own modern life. Meaning, in a type of inventory where you say, hey, let me look at some patterns here, let me look at what I've been doing. And you realize that maybe you've been dating the same person over and over again, and you say, why do I do that? And then you look at actual patterns. You don't sit on your ass and say, it's because I'm selfish, it's because I'm self-seeking, it's because I'm afraid, and horse shit like that. I mean, that's you can learn from your mistakes if you're willing to sit down and actually pick apart patterns of behavior. Like, for example, I noticed with this magical vape right here that oftentimes when I get a taste of it, it's the flavor that tastes amazing, and I'm just doing this constantly, mindlessly, brainlessly. And when I'm doing that, it's not no longer about the taste, it's about maintaining that thing, but it's a hand-to-mouth compulsion that I've been trying to kind of work on a little bit. There is a thing, before I move forward a little further, called Bayes analysis or Bayesian analysis. There used to be a asshole in AA that would always say, Bayesian analysis proves God, which, by the way, it's not Bayesian. I don't know where we got that from, but Bayes analysis is all about probabilities, and with God, there is no probabilities that we can possibly hope to measure because we haven't demonstrated there's one yet. Bayesian analysis is really simple. I can teach it to you right now, and you can use it in any area of your life. It's what weather forecasters sometimes use. It's what stock market people use. It's what a lot of people use. But if you're not going to be trying to calculate weather predictions based on patterns, and you're not going to be analyzing the stock markets, then there's a very, very, very simple and crude form that you can use. And I'll show it to you in a couple of seconds. It's not really complicated at all. Unlike this guy in AA who would say, Bayesian analysis. Bayesian analysis is about probability. So let me take a scenario for you. You get off work for your day off. You wake up in the morning and you say, I have a bunch of chores to do, and I'm going to get them all done today on my day off. I am not going to fucking sit around on Twitter, X, or whatever the fuck it is it's called. I don't even know. I think bot is what I would call it. It's 1,000% political bots all talking to one another as far as I'm concerned. But let's say you say, I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to. I'm going to get things done on my day off. I'm going to be useful. But I'm going to check one. I just got to see what's trending. And then you turn it on and you see a post from a thing called Truth Social. And then you start reading the replies. And the next thing you know, 3 hours is gone. And you're like, where did the time go? I mean, I just logged in here to check what the latest horse shit is going on in the world today. And now here it is 3.5 hours later. And I'm looking at these comments saying that the PM of Britain, Mr. Starmer, should be removed from office. And I'm in the middle of all this. How the fuck did this happen? That's where Bayes analysis would come in, because Bayes analysis would ask you to look at how many times in your day off you've done that. 7 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times. Let's say you had 7 days off, and on 7 of those days, 10 days off, and you did it 7 times. That's a 7 out of 10 chance. Meaning there's a 70% chance on your day off that you're going to turn on the social media and get sucked in if you turn it on. If it's every single time you get a day off, well, guess what? It's a 10 out of 10. You got a 100% chance that that's what you're going to do with your day off if you go to X or Twitter or Bot Farm or whatever. So you look at that and you say, well, the last 9 days I had off, I got on X and wasted half the day. So on this day, I'm going to make a different decision. I'm not going to turn X on X at all, and I'm just going to do all the things I set out to do, and I'll do it this evening when I get home from work. You just used Bayes analysis. Every time I log in here, I'm on here 3 hours, so I'm going to stop logging in altogether. Real easy. And you can do it with anything. You can do it with every time I go to this restaurant, I overeat. I did that 7 out of 10 times, so you got a 70% chance you're going to do that. You could do it with drinking. The last 100 times I drank, out of the last 100 times, 80 of those times turned into drunken benders, so there's an 80% chance it's going to happen again. So I'll just avoid drinking. That's really all that is. That's how you do actual inventories. That's how you look at patterns of behavior. Not get down on your knees and say, oh, I'm selfish, I'm self-centered. The big book says, garbage can, coffee cup, take all from me, the good, the bad, all of it. Make me an instrument of the coffee cup, or any other weirdo, hysterical, religious horse shit, okay? Modern science describes agency as a process, a continuous computation in the brain. Okay, it integrates expectations, sensory, feedback, memory, bodily states, Have you ever recalled a memory and actually gotten tense and anxiety ridden like it was happening to you? You know, it's built. Agency is built moment to moment. It can be fragile and it's context dependent. It grows when people feel safe enough to try and examine their own agency. When they can see that their actions produce predictable outcomes. And when they have the skills to manage the consequences of those actions. You really can't do that as a thorough inventory in the rooms of Quackaholics Anonymous if you're believing your life depends on it. You're going to die if you don't get through it. And you're just trying to get it all written down so you can put this before the higher power spirit of the universe. You're not learning anything. You're doing it with a sense of urgency. What if you sat down on a day off when you felt safe and comfortable within yourself and you said, today I'm going to cut out all the radio noise in my head, and I'm just going to try to be objective and honest about myself. I'm going to listen to my favorite tunes. I'm going to have my favorite movie on in the background for noise so I can feel secure and at home. And I'm just going to solve this myself. That's more ideal. That's more therapeutic than being told, if you don't get that thing done, the spirit of the universe, coffee cup, garbage can, and God that we all talk about in here is going to come kill you with drunkenness. This type of self-examination is going to collapse when people are shamed, or when they're silenced, or when they're told that their will is not their own, that their thoughts are toxic and dangerous, that their mind's a dangerous neighborhood and you can't go there by yourself. I remember the very first time I looked at the third step and it was made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him, which is a stupid thing. I didn't know there's a God to be understood as we understood him, which means, as Bill W. tells you to understand it. But it made me feel like, so I'm going to turn everything over and I'm just going to be a puppet on strings dancing around. And I actually had old-timers who were good at that fucking semantics game tell me, well, it doesn't say to turn your will over to God. It says the care of God, the care of God. That it's not literally a surrender to puppetry. These people are such masters at manipulation and wordsmithing and horse shit. I've actually heard that defense many times, but it's bullshit. If you tell someone to turn their will over to the care of God, you're asking them to replace their own life, their own authorship, their own agency with trust in an external agent. An external agent that has not been proven to exist. Now, it could be experienced as relief to do it. Woo, thank God. I just turned it all over. Nothing's going to happen to me now because I just gave it all up. Feels great. It's like that feeling I had one time right when I was facing all that jail time for those DUIs and I was inside treatment. And I was laying down on the bed and I just felt this great sense of relief wash over me. I'm in the hands of the machinery now. Let the machinery handle this whole entire thing. I can't fuck with this anymore. It felt like a burden rolling off my back, a weight removed, because let the system handle it. And guess what? The system was fucked up and it made it worse. It can reduce anxiety when you think you've surrendered and you don't have to worry about things anymore and you don't have to struggle any longer because it's not in your hands. Relief can be a bridge to major changes, but relief is not the same thing as building up confidence in yourself. Imagine if, as a little child, the few times that your parents pissed you off when they told you you were going to have to do something by yourself, if they'd have never done that. If every time you went to your parents with a problem, they just did it, they just solved it for you. You know, hey, I don't know how to do this homework. Well, we'll do it for you, and we can make it look like you did it. Hey, I don't know how to do this. Well, we'll just do it for you. I've encountered this problem with doing this. Well, we've got it solved. Just let us run everything for you. Just don't even try to think. Just give it to us. You're going to be woefully unprepared to deal with reality as you grow up, if that is the case. Relief, as surrendering, doesn't teach emotional regulation. It doesn't teach about shortcuts and short circuits to anger. It doesn't teach about boundary settings. It doesn't teach how to navigate things that trigger you and bother you. Relief can be just a temporary thing, but if that relief is removed and you find out, guess what? There's nothing to turn over to the care of. Now you're vulnerable. Just like the little kid who had his parents do everything for him. The rhetorical move that AA people do with this is they say the step is not literal. It's just a way to, it's just, you can't run your own life. You surrender to the process and all this other horseshit semantics they play. But it's trying to avoid a much harder question. And the question is, if the program's efficiency depends on people believing in metaphysical agents that are running their lives, what's going to happen to everybody who starts to experience, as the Rolling Stones said, a moment of doubt and pain? And what's going to happen to people who just simply don't believe in this bullshit? And if the program's efficiency depends on no social support and structure unless you believe, why does that support and structure have to be wrapped into AA's all-or-nothing message where if it doesn't fit you and it doesn't suit you, it's your fault? Old-timers will say, well, I'm an atheist and the steps work for me. I don't have a problem with any of it. Well, that's not evidence, by the way. That's nothing but an argument from fucking authority. I'm an atheist and the religion doesn't bother me. Well, kudos and good for you. Bully for you. Who gives a fuck? Does the structure still harm people? Is it still a lie? Is it still based on made-up bullshit? Doesn't matter if you're comfortable with it or not. I'm sure there were people who were comfortable with Charlie Manson. And a person can recover after joining a group for many reasons. If a person says, AA saved my life, they don't ever have to expound on that specifically. Just, AA saved my life. But a person can recover after joining a group because they wanted to stop more than they did before by the time they got to the group. They may have gained social connections that reduced their misery and their isolation. Really lonely and alienated people who have been pushed aside by society and family and fucked over by the legal system due to their addictions may feel a great sense of connection with this room full of people that will clap and applaud and laugh with you when you speak. You might actually feel validated. People may have adopted routines by going into meetings where they lowered their exposure to triggers. They may have accessed medical care or therapy that they're not allowed to talk about in AA. They may have simply aged into a different set of priorities. Believe it or not, I can't actually honestly claim that I will never drink again no matter what, and that's just it. And I'm too strong to not drink again. That didn't happen to me. When I quit drinking, I didn't even know it was going to be for good. When I quit drinking, I didn't know that I was going to still be standing here all these years later without being drunk. When I quit drinking, I was under the impression that I was probably going to go back to it any day now. And yet it never happened. So I might have just matured out of my addiction, or I might have gained a greater sense of self-awareness, or I might have been what was kind of the motivating factor behind it all. I cannot tolerate waking up, throwing up, and having paralyzing anxiety and pouring sweat at 2 a.m., reaching for a bottle because I'm just in absolute, pure, abject terror. That may have been all there was to it. I don't think there's anything mystical about it. The honest scientific posture when it comes to this kind of thing, these conundrums, when someone says the program saved my life, is ask what mechanisms produce the change and to test those mechanisms. When studies examine 12-step facilitation, what they often find is the active ingredients is social linkage, and engagement with peers. The spiritual language is not a plausible mechanism. That's just the language you must speak if you wish to be accepted. It's one possible wrapper for mechanisms that can be delivered, by the way, in very inclusive ways that don't involve religious exclusion, are telling people they're going to die for not accepting the fucking religion. You can actually build connections and frameworks and social circles, not revolving around some hierarchy where a bunch of low-life pieces of shit get to pretend they're chosen by God to stop drinking, and that they are chosen by God to do whatever they want to everybody who's new and vulnerable and fragile. And there's a further rhetorical move I want to address because it's common and it's misleading, but this is a pet peeve of mine. So there are those who I come across that identify as AA agnostics. I don't believe in God, but the steps work. Or I don't believe in God. I say fuck God, but I go to AA. That's often thrown out to me, and has been thrown out to me in the past, as some kind of proof that the program exists, that the program works, and the steps work, and they're neutral with regards to what you believe in. Let me rephrase that, because I was stumbling all over that. They're trying to say that you don't have to believe in any kind of God or higher power, and you can be an agnostic about the existence of God, and the steps will still work anyway. Let's just reframe them into some more secular language. But you're actually fucking up the definition of agnostic, because an agnostic is the thing that says without knowledge about whether a deity exists or anything else. I could say I'm agnostic about UFOs. I thought I saw one when I was 16 years old. I was in South Jersey, so that ought to tell you something. If you're from South Jersey, you know it's all in fun. Even though it's a Taylor ham and not a fucking pork roll. Some South Jersey people will comment. But I did see a UFO, but I don't know if it was a UFO. I don't know if it was a plane. I don't know if it was military aircraft. I don't know if maybe I just drank a little too much or smoked a little too much and was seeing lights in the sky. I don't know. Is there alien life out there? I don't know. I have no way of knowing. So I'm agnostic about unidentified flying objects, although they don't call them that anymore. I forgot what the name is. You know, we went from flying saucers to UFOs to IFO or whatever the fuck it is, but you get the idea what I'm talking about. Well, you can't be agnostic about a program and believe in the program at the same time. That's a literal contradiction baked in. If you're an agnostic in AA, you're agnostic about AA working, well then yeah, I can get on board with that, but you can't come in here and say, AA saved my life, and I'm an AA agnostic. That's no different than the bullshit earlier, people saying, well, I don't have a problem with AA, and I am an atheist, as though that means anything. It's just a fat fucking argument from authority. To claim the steps work for you while claiming you're an agnostic about the steps is to conflate personal benefits with some type of epistemic certainty or some shit like that. You could say I don't hold a personal belief about God and I found community and structure being around these meetings that helped me stop drinking. I mean, yeah, sure, you could say that, but nobody does that. Nobody wants to come out and say the entire program is built on a lie, a farce, plagiarism, and dishonesty. They want to somehow get the best of both worlds. They want to say I'm a secular humanist while denying anything about secular humanism and embracing a religious cult. Might as well go to the Westboro Baptist Church and say, I'm on board with the Westboro Baptist Church. I'm an atheist, so you can't come at me with that. No, I get it. You're a homophobic fucking asshole that thinks it's okay to be a homophobic fucking asshole in Westboro Baptist Church. But you're an atheist, so therefore you have authority. It's a classic argument from authority, and it kills me when people do that. Agnosticism is a position about knowledge, not an endorsement of a mechanism. The honest agnostic says, I don't know whether this physical agent exists or not. I don't even know if there is one or not. Not, I don't know if there is a God. I don't know what God is, but I know he is. That's just another stupid fucking claim. And I've heard that in meetings on numerous occasions. And you have to confront the empirical reality of who stays and who leaves. If anybody can claim AA saved my life, unless you're a garbage human being like this other asshole in the comments not too long ago who said, I don't care if people die or not. Save my life, that's all I care about. Well, congratulations on admitting you're a complete fucking lowlife scumbag. But for those of us who are interested in saving lives, for those of us who are interested in not seeing people fall by the wayside, for those of us who are interested in not seeing people's lives destroyed, we actually want facts and figures. Pieces of shit like you, who get all the attention you want in AA and don't give a shit who dies, you are irrelevant. Although it's good of you to admit what kind of person you are and the kind of person that AA turns you into. Because the fellowship's own materials and the broader literature acknowledge that many people do not stay in AA. Many newcomers attend a few meetings and then they just disappear. If you've been in any major home group in any large metropolitan area, you know for a fact what I'm talking about. There's no home group that's not pretty much the same that I've been to. where you got a little bitty tiny hierarchy controlling the entire meeting. You've got a whole bunch of people quartered in. You got a few people that kind of hang out and hang around, and then in 6 months, the hierarchy's still there. The few people that were like me that were constantly relapsing and going to meetings are still there. Everybody else is gone. I mean, I never will forget a guy with 90 days giving me this really condescending look. He said, "You just keep coming back." I said, "I have been coming back. I've been coming back here at that time for 8 years. I said, it'll be you fucks who go away. All you fucks that come in here and think you're way smarter than the people like myself who keep relapsing and just won't get God, you'll be gone within a couple of months. I mean, if you're going to talk to me like that, I'd talk to you like that." And he was gone in a couple of months, lo and behold. Not saying he went back to drinking, but they don't stay. I mean, the turnover rate is horrendous. And when people say, "Well, you're just making that up, there's no proof of that," you go to AA.org, your own fucking organization will show you that. It shows internal surveys, shows how many people drop out. It shows how many sobriety coins are ordered. There's a whole lot of 1-year medallions in AA home groups. There's a whole lot of 2-year medallions, but there's very, very few 16-year medallions and 20-year medallions and 30-year medallions. A lot of the times, the pattern is pretty consistent with their own internal surveys. People come and then they disappear and leave. Many who try the program do not find a fit. The pattern matters because it tells us something about the model's reach and its assumptions. If a program requires metaphysical assent, moral conformity to be effective, then people who cannot or will not assent, as it says in the very beginning, are excluded automatically. So, in other words, the minute you walk through the room and you hear the first how it works, you're already being told if it don't work for you, it's your fault. You know, there are such unfortunates, they're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. They're telling you it's your fault when you come right in. If the benefits to this bullshit is social connection and structure, then we should design multiple pathways to deliver those benefits without requiring religious cults. It would be great, in my opinion, it would be great if in every city and state we had a place, multiple places, where people could go and they could hang out and they could talk and they could make social connections and not have to have any of the religious claptrap horse shit and the toxic hierarchy of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you wanted to have a place where people wanted to hang out and talk about, well, today was a tough day for me. I really felt like drinking. And I used to, every Thursday at this time was when I would start my weekend early. And, I had to pass the bar, my favorite bar at happy hour. And, today was tough. And then someone else was sitting right across from them. And they said, "Yeah, I know how you feel, when the weather changes, like it was damp and rainy. And man, I used to love to stay indoors when it was damp and rainy and slam one beer right after the other and listen to music or something like that." That would be an effective and a very good thing. But we don't get that. We don't get anything like that. We get a religious cult that tells us you must conform to this incoherent bullshit. Public policies and clinical practices should not funnel people into a single model that only a tiny, tiny little percentage of people hang on to, that has a massive turnover rate, that has a massive failure rate, that has never been proven to work or shown to be effective. There's a moral cost. If we want to talk about that word moral, there's a moral cost to insisting that confession and shame are therapeutic when it's well researched and evidenced that it is not. Shame is not the same, by the way, as guilt. And that's something AA capitalizes on. They lump them all together. They conflate them. Guilt can motivate repair because it focuses on a specific action and invites restitution. To be honest, that was one of the first things that kind of bothered me about AA, because I got there and they were like, yeah, you probably never apologized to anybody in your entire life. That's what step 8 is for. And I would hear people talking about, I never tried to apologize to anybody. I just went through life fucking everybody over, and now I gotta go and apologize to people. I generally always tried to make things right with people. If if I felt like I was in the wrong about something. There are certain individuals out there that I have no desire to make anything right with because I fucking hate them because of what they did to me, and I'm not going to accept any apologies from them. That includes the asshole that commented not too long ago trying to claim that he fucked up when he was my friend. Yeah, you were such a good friend that you left me abandoned with alcohol withdrawals on the street somewhere where I didn't even have a wallet and couldn't even get any place. No, fuck you, fuck your apology, stick it up your ass. I don't want to make things right with you. In case you're watching this, I threw that in there for that reason. If anybody else is confused, that's why I put that in there. The moral cost to actual shame, though, shame is different. Many people feel ashamed of things that they shouldn't feel ashamed of. They feel ashamed for being, they feel ashamed for their sexual orientation. They feel ashamed for their sex lives. And you've heard me defend sex workers, so I don't need to defend it again on here, but I'm going to say it. Sex workers should not have to feel like they need to hide what they do. And financial institutions have no fucking right to cut off their payment avenues because it's the right thing to do. That's shame. That's not wrongdoing. Wrongdoing is when you overreact to a situation and you go back to the person and you say, I overreacted, I was angry, I'm sorry about that, if they want to accept it or not. Which is something I've always tried to do, and I think most people have. I don't think the narrative that AA requires when you go in there and you say, I never tried to make anything right with anybody. I just don't believe you. Just like the people say, I never read a book in my life until I read the big book. Well, it kind of shows. You don't have a fucking thought in your head outside of a slogan. Many people, though, who struggle with substances and shame, they have histories of trauma. Trauma changes the nervous system. It alters threat perception and regulation. When you layer moral condemnation on top of trauma and on top of induced shame, you risk re-traumatizing the people in the program that the program claims to help. Okay, that's just plain old cruelty disguised as tough love in AA. And if we accept that agency is constructed and that shame corrodes the conditions for agency, then the ethical imperative would be to build recovery systems that support autonomy, competence, and connection. Teach skills for emotional regulation. I dropped my note. I'm not totally clueless. Provide trauma-informed therapy. Did I look like a character in a movie? Just keep reading there. Offer medication-assisted treatment when it reduces mortality and improves retention. Create social supports that do not require metaphysical assent. Measure outcomes that matter beyond just abstinence. You know, I had been out of the program for 6 or 7 months one time, and I run into a guy, and the first thing he said to me was, are you still drinking? Not how you doing, not what have you been up to, not how's life been treating you, nothing. Just the sobriety date. Because I think, to me, autonomy and agency for you is not just about not drinking forever and ever and be, and whatever, and just craving and not craving alcohol for the rest of your fucking life. I think autonomy would be relational health, the quality of life. Is your life improving? Is your life getting better? Are there toxic elements in your life that you need to cut out? Because I cut out a lot of toxic people this last go-around when I realized the Calvary wasn't coming to save me. And for those of you who know what I'm ripping off here, the strong, silent type of Gary Cooper wasn't helping me. And for those who saw the show, you know what I'm talking about. But nothing was coming to save me. It was up to me to build it. My life is not a dream. My life is not a fairy tale. My life is not wonderful. I'm not where I would like to be, but you know what? It's a hell of a lot better than it was in the previous past and in those fucking meetings. And we ought to be honest about the stakes here, because addiction is a very high leading cause of death, and it's a preventable death. Policies that increase retention and effective care can reduce actual mortality. AA claims that it saves lives, but it's never demonstrated that it's done anything but give a playground to a bunch of narcissistic assholes. Policies that shame people and exclude people increase risk. Therefore, the program cannot save lives because the program tells people that death is a part of it. That though there are plenty of people who are going to die, and it's all their fault. Because God, wasn't merciful towards them like it was to these assholes because they kissed its ass more. The burden of proof in any situation for treatment ought to be on the ones who make the metaphysical claims or assert that this is the way care must be delivered. The default of public systems should be plural pathways that respect autonomy and evidence. Your desire to change is probably the most important ingredient in all of this. The willingness to try is the engine of transformation. No ritual of confession or bowing and surrendering and letting old-timer assholes destroy your life is going to make you any better. It's just going to replace your agency. And any pathway forward from a destructive addiction has to include agency. It must. I could provide all kinds of proof as to what shaming people does to them. I could provide all kinds of proof as to what happens when people become silent because of the social retribution that they will receive. Then they get labeled as outcasts. And then I'm going to skip that note because that has nothing to do with this topic on hand that I'm defending. So if someone is going to claim the program saved their life, you have to ask them, what exactly was it? It most certainly was not God. It was most certainly not a spirit of the universe. It most certainly was not a moral inventory, because those inventories, I saw hundreds of people do those inventories. None of them got sober shortly afterward. So what exactly is it? Now, they will lie. That's the only problem with the AA people. They will lie. They will say, well, I don't even believe in God, and the program saved me. Well, the meetings I go to, nobody believes in God in those meetings. Everybody says, fuck God, and stuff like that. And nobody says a word to them. You're just so full of shit. So much for rigorous honesty from you lying motherfuckers. They won't tell you the truth. But you do have to ask them, do you believe? Well, if you don't believe in God, and you don't believe in the book, and you don't believe in that, then what the fuck are you doing in AA? I had to ask a guy that one time. He's like, I don't read the book. I don't do the steps, but I know AA saved my life. Sounds to me like you just quit drinking and you're giving AA all the credit. You're defending it for no fucking reason whatsoever, because AA literature makes it very clear that half measures avail us nothing, and you got to do the whole program. So are you admitting that the program doesn't work? That you just like being in the program? Because if that's what it is, that's what you need to say. I just like being in the program, but it's not effective. But don't fucking sit there and lie to people and say the program saved my life, but I don't believe in God, and I don't do the steps, and I never had a sponsor, and nobody ever said nothing to me, so you don't believe in the program. So the program couldn't have saved your life. Don't let them lie. Pin those fuckers down in those comments when they come at you, and make them explain. If they get too insulting, block them and move on, because they're not worth a shit anyway. But it's really good to put those comments out there on Facebook and other places like that so that other people can read them. Because AA members constantly demonstrate on social media what utter dishonest pieces of shit they really are. That's coming from people who claim the program saved their life. Well, it didn't. I'm making the claim again. The program has never saved anybody, followed as it was written. No higher power came into your hotel room and said, who are you to say there's no God? That didn't happen, okay? Nothing came down out of the sky and altered your brain chemistry unless you can demonstrate it. That's called delusion. The steps don't do anything but induce more shame and guilt. There's nothing you can point to in the literature of the program itself that saves anybody's life. Oh, and that story about the guy who went 25 years without a drink and drank again and died with his jazz records and his carpet slippers that look like Chip and Dale, the cartoon squirrels or whatever they were. I think they were squirrels. Pretty sure they were squirrels or chipmunks. But maybe they were chipmunks. But that comes directly from Peabody. He didn't invent a fictitious dude listening to Miles Davis records and drinking gin and dancing around his living room in his bathrobe, or maybe hopping up and down on the couch in his underwear like Tom Cruise in that movie with the Bob Seger tune. Don't remember that movie either. I'm getting kind of old here. But all of this, it's all a farce, a lie. It's based on fallacies and made-up assertions, stolen and plagiarized. AA never saved anybody's life. And if I didn't make that claim clear in this video, I can continue making more videos and defending the claim. But I have more topics that I'll be coming out with, and hopefully some more interviews too. So I'm going to leave today with a couple of AA comments. I'm going to leave today with a couple of comments by subscribers. I got two. This one I'm going to read because it jumped out at me immediately, but they said, I left AA after a lot of sober time and a few relapses because one day it came to me when it was what it was people were doing. I saw for too long I was brainwashed and manipulated by my thinking in the group. Also, and this is important too, because it's also in Kirsten Johnson's latest video, the Sobriety Bestie video, with the latest video interview with Kylie that just dropped. This is important, what they said. Also, I have autism, and the God thing was not suitable for my literal brain that had to know what God is, and nobody ever told me what it is. They never tell you what the program really is, but they'll tell you the program saved their life, you know. They all say it's what I wanted it to be, but how could I believe and make up such a thing as a God? I was betrayed too. I thought I had real friends in AA when all it was just guidance and the same waffle. Okay, and the next comment is referring to the live show I did with Sobriety Bestie where we were talking about medical doctors, like today, to this day, with accessible records across state lines. Anytime I even so much as have the fucking sniffles and I have to go to a doctor, the first thing they do is punch in my medical history and they're like, we got a serious drinking problem here, you know. I was in a lot of emergency rooms, and a lot of that was done by AA people who, when I was passed out drunk, would say, hey, I just need to get to my bed and sleep it off. No, we're going to call the ambulance, you know, or some shit like that. But he wrote, it's sad that you have to not even mention history of alcohol and drug abuse to get better medical care. In other words, you might have to go to a doctor and lie. The same stigma would say is for other mental health issues. I usually don't bring up my social communication disorder, which is a factor in my alcohol abuse. I do mention it on my Darth Melkor channel where I go over better alternatives than AA. So anyway, this was a much longer video than I originally intended it to be, actually. And I had taken my hat off before the video started, so I've been doing this the whole video because I'm having a bad hair day. So for those of you who are curious, that's what a bad hair day looks like for me most of the time when I get out of bed in the morning. See you guys in a couple of weeks.